Welcome back to our conversation with economic and market expert Peter Cohan of Babson College, author of Goliath Strikes Back. So, Peter, right now on Beacon Hill, there's a lot of talk about taxes. Governor Baker has proposed a range of tax cuts for the elderly, low-income and renters, and then also capital gains in the estate tax. There's also the issue of suspending the gas tax temporarily to give drivers some relief, particularly over the heavy usage summer months. Which, if any, of these proposals make sense for the local economy?
Well, I think the ones that make sense are the ones that will relieve the pressure of inflation on, the average person.
Yeah.
So, for example, the gasoline tax one strikes me as really good, but looking into the details of it, it only makes sense if they suspend the gasoline tax and that actually gets translated into lower prices at the pump rather than going to the distributors who then don't pass on, the lower, their lower costs in terms of lower prices. So I would favor that. I would favor tax cuts on people who have lower incomes. And I would also favor kind of cutting back on the estate tax.
Mm-hmm. We're an outlier on the degree of taxation on estates, right?
Yeah. The one thing I definitely don't think is going to make much of a difference is cutting the capital gains tax, primarily because I think most people are sitting on some significant capital losses. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of capital gains in the coming years.
And of course, there'll be a question on the November ballot called the fair share tax, which is basically, for the first time ever, instituting a graduated income tax in the form of a 4% surcharge on incomes of over $1 million. And those could be family, business incomes, or so forth. What potential impact could that have on our economy?
Well, this is a question I don't really know the answer to. I mean, I'd love to see some economic analysis of how much additional revenue that might bring in and what the real benefit is to the state. So I really don't know what the answer to that one is.
All right. Speaking of lessons, economic lessons, we're through 2 years of the pandemic.
Yes.
And maybe due for another surge here, given some of the recent numbers. It's a little bit alarming. I know you like to think a little more long-term. Are there any long-term lessons about the local economy and perhaps how it needs to change that can be drawn from what we've gone through?
Well, I was looking at, for example, how dependent are we on people coming in as tourists to the area? Yeah. And what I was surprised to see was how small it is as a percentage of our gross state product. Our gross state product was up a whopping 9% last year. And the most important categories of our economy are things that are really solid, in my opinion, like investments, finance, real estate, insurance, education, medical. Those kinds of things are really strong. And I think the great thing about Massachusetts is that it is an economy that is based on brain power. And brain power is very flexible. If we have a pandemic and people have to work from home, a lot of those jobs can be done from home. Definitely we're going to lose if we have a pandemic and people can't travel as much. But overall, I think that the great strength of Massachusetts is that it's a state of mind. And the fact that people have these brilliant intellects and they want to be here, making sure we keep that is really essential. And I think the one thing that really makes it hard to do that is our real estate prices, which makes it really hard for people who graduate from our great schools to afford to live here. So if there was one thing I would do, it would be to try to improve on that.
So we've got to, in terms of both the cost of housing and the overall cost of living, we've really got to watch that for risk of squandering the advantage we have that you just described, that people want to be around other smart people.
Yes. Definitely. To me, that is, the essential strength. I mean, I wrote a book called Startup Cities where I talked about, how our area has the great advantage of attracting and holding on to great talent. And, I grew up in Worcester. In Worcester, there's some great universities, but a lot of people want to get out of there as soon as they graduate. Right. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And what does happen is that, people who like to live in Cambridge and, around, Harvard and MIT want to stay there and can afford to stay there.
Hope they're listening on Beacon Hill. Peter Cohan, thank you very much.